Welcome to Edexcel A-Level Business. In this lesson, we are covering Section 2.2.3 Break-Even Analysis, a core topic in business finance commonly assessed in both data response and essay questions. In this lesson, you will learn to calculate contribution, understand the break-even point formula, and use contribution to find that point. We will also cover margin of safety, interpreting break-even charts, and the limitations of this analysis. Let's start with a fundamental question. What exactly is break-even? Simply put, break-even compares a firm's total revenue with its fixed and variable cost to identify the absolute minimum level of sales needed to cover all expenses. Knowing this minimum sales target is absolutely vital, especially for new businesses. It tells managers exactly how many products they must produce and sell just to survive, ensuring they do not operate at a financial loss. Imagine a scenario where a business calculates its break-even sales level to be 400 units per week. If they only manage to sell 200 units, they might face a severe weekly loss of £5,000. Before we calculate the break-even point, we first need to understand a crucial concept called contribution. Contribution looks at the profit made on individual products before we even start thinking about the overall fixed costs of the business. The formula for contribution per unit is straightforward. You simply take the selling price of a single product and subtract the variable cost required to make that one specific unit. This gives you the unit contribution. Why is it called contribution? Because this remaining amount contributes towards paying off the business's fixed costs. Once all those fixed costs are fully paid off, any further contribution goes directly towards generating a net profit. To find the total contribution for the entire business, you multiply the contribution per unit by the total quantity of units sold. This tells you the total amount available to cover fixed costs across all sales. From there, calculating your total profit becomes very simple. You just take your total contribution and subtract your total fixed costs. If the result is positive, you have a profit. If negative, you are making a loss. Now, let's look at the official break-even point formula. The break-even point occurs exactly where total fixed costs plus total variable costs equal total revenue. At this precise output level, the business makes zero profit and zero loss. However, the most efficient way to calculate the break-even output is by using our contribution concept. The formula is total fixed costs divided by the contribution per unit. This tells you how many units must be sold. Let's apply this to a worked example using Igloo ice cream. Suppose each ice cream costs 50 pence in variable costs to manufacture, and the business sells them to customers for £2 and 50 pence each. First, we calculate the contribution per unit. We take the selling price of £2.50 and subtract the variable cost of 50 pence. This leaves us with a contribution of exactly £2 per ice cream. Next, we need to factor in Igloo ice cream's fixed costs, which are £2,000 per week. These are costs like rent and insurance that do not change regardless of how many ice creams are produced. Using our formula, we divide the fixed costs of £2,000 by the unit contribution of £2. This gives us a break-even output of exactly 1,000 units per week. That is their survival target. What happens if Igloo sells more than their break-even target? Let's say they sell 1,200 ice creams. Their total contribution would be £2 multiplied by 1,200, equaling £2,400. To find the profit, we take that total contribution of £2,400 and subtract the fixed costs of £2,000. This leaves Igloo ice cream with a healthy weekly profit of £400. While formulas are great, businesses also use break-even charts to visualize this data. A break-even chart plots revenue and costs across all possible output levels, giving managers a clear visual representation of profitability at a single glance. Let's build a break-even chart step by step. First, we set up our axes. The horizontal axis represents the output or units produced, while the vertical axis represents both costs and sales revenue, measured in pounds. The first line we draw is for fixed costs. Because fixed costs do not change with output, this is drawn as a perfectly horizontal straight line, starting from the specific cost value on the vertical axis. Next, we add the total costs line. This line does not start at 0. It starts exactly where the fixed cost line hits the vertical axis, and then slopes upward diagonally as variable costs are added per unit. Finally, we draw the sales revenue line. If 0 units are sold, revenue is 0, so this line always starts at the origin, the bottom left corner, and slopes upward diagonally as more units are sold. The magic happens where the total cost line and the sales revenue line intersect. This exact point of intersection is the break-even point. If you read down to the horizontal axis, you find your break-even output. Any area on the chart to the left of this intersection represents a loss, because the total cost line is higher than the revenue line. The business has not yet sold enough units to cover its expenses. Conversely, any area to the right of the intersection represents a profit. Here, the sales revenue line rises above the total cost line, meaning every additional unit sold is now contributing directly to the business's bottom line. Let's explore another real business example. Berry & Hall, a company selling aromatics. They sell their product for £5 per kilogram, with a variable cost of £3 per kilogram to produce and package. Berry & Hall have annual fixed costs of £50,000, and their factory has a maximum output capacity of 50,000 kilograms per year. Let's calculate their break-even point using the contribution method. First, the contribution per unit is £5 minus £3, which equals £2 per kilogram. We then divide the 50,000 pounds of fixed costs by this £2 contribution to find the break-even point. This calculation reveals a break-even output of 25,000 kilograms per year. Berry & Hall must sell exactly this amount to cover all their costs before they can start generating any actual profit for the year. This brings us to another vital concept, the margin of safety. The margin of safety measures the difference between a business's current or expected sales volume and its break-even output. It is a buffer against unexpected downturns. The formula is simple. Margin of safety equals current sales minus break-even output. It tells managers exactly how much sales can drop before the business stops making a profit and starts incurring a financial loss. Returning to Berry & Hall, let's assume they are currently selling 40,000 kilograms of aromatics. We already know their break-even point is 25,000 kilograms, so we subtract 25,000 from 40,000.